Rain hammered the hospital windows like an urgent knock from the world outside. Inside the waiting room, the air was thick with antiseptic, stale coffee, and fear. Maria Carter sat hunched on a plastic chair, her fingers clenched around a folded hospital statement that shook with every shallow breath she took. Across the glass wall, her little brother Leo slept beneath a web of wires and softly pulsing monitors. Each faint beep sounded like a fragile heartbeat counting down. The total due might as well have been written in fire. It was more money than Maria could earn in a lifetime of double shifts and sleepless nights. An administrator in blue scrubs approached with practiced gentleness. "Miss Carter, I'm so sorry, but the extension ends this week. If a large payment isn't made, we'll have to transfer your brother to a public facility." Maria's throat tightened. She knew what that meant. Fewer specialists. Long waits. Outcomes nobody liked to talk about. She had already buried both parents after a freeway collision that mangled their small sedan and shattered the quiet life they once lived. Leo was all she had left. "I'll find a way," she whispered. Leaving the building felt like walking out of a battlefield. The city outside roared with traffic and sirens, uncaring and relentless. Maria pulled her thin coat tighter and reached into her purse, feeling only loose change and a crumpled business card she had been meaning to throw away for weeks. She unfolded it now with trembling fingers. Ethan Reed, private. Solutions. She had met him by accident in a crowded diner, where she waited tables at dawn after her night shift at a care facility. He had overheard her on the phone, begging a lender for more time. He had listened without interruption, then quietly placed the card beside her coffee and said, "Sometimes the roads we refuse to consider are the only ones left." She had thought him strange. Dangerous, even. Now he was all she had. That evening, under the hum of a lonely streetlight, Maria dialed the number. His voice was calm, unhurried. Too steady for the storm raging inside her. They agreed to meet the next night. Maria returned to the hospital and pressed her palm against the glass beside Leo's bed. "I don't know what I'm about to do," she whispered, "but I'm doing it for you." And with that promise, she stepped onto a road she could not see the end of. The cafe was warm, dim, and crowded with after-work chatter. Maria arrived early, clutching a manila folder filled with every debt she owed the world. She nearly missed Ethan when he walked in. Power did not announce itself with noise. It moved quietly, confidently. He sat across from her as if this were an ordinary meeting between equals. He was younger than she expected, calm eyes, tailored suit, and the relaxed posture of a man who had never wondered if he could pay his own bills. She told him everything. The accident, the hospital, the deadlines, the eviction notice taped crookly on her apartment door. When she finished, her voice broke with exhaustion. Ethan studied her for a long moment. "I can erase this medicine debt," he said. "All of it." Her breath caught. "Then why hasn't the world done it already?" "Because nothing is free," he replied without cruelty. "And what I need cannot be purchased easily." He told her then about his condition, a medical reality that would close the door on fatherhood if he waited much longer. He spoke of corporate pressure, of family expectations, of loneliness that no fortune had fixed. "I need a surrogate," he said. "Not a stranger, someone I can trust." The words struck like a sudden cold wind. The proposal was clinical, legal, sealed with contracts and doctors and safeguards. In return, every one of Leo's medical bills would vanish. She would be housed, protected, paid. After the birth, she would walk away. Maria's mind spun. This was not a bargain of money. This was a bargain of flesh, of futures, of an aching unknown. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you have already proven you will sacrifice everything for the person you love," he said. "And I need someone like that to carry my child." The cafe noise faded into a distant blur. Maria thought of Leo's fragile lungs, of the way he squeezed her finger when he slept, of the sound the machines made when his pulse dipped. She asked for time. That night, beside her brother's bed, she told him a gentle lie about school and sunshine and coming home soon. When he drifted off again, she whispered a trembling truth into the quiet room. "If this saves you," she said, "I will do it." And with that decision, the weight of the world did not lift. It simply changed shape. The weeks that followed blurred into sterile hallways, white coats, and quiet instructions. The clinic was elegant, hushed like a private sanctuary built for secrets. The doctors were kind. The procedures were precise. Everything was controlled, except what was growing in Maria's heart. Ethan attended every appointment. At first, he kept his distance, always professional, always careful not to cross lines neither of them fully understood yet. But slowly, walls softened. They sat together in waiting rooms. They shared coffee. They spoke of childhoods, of lost parents, of quiet fears the money could not touch. The first time the heartbeat echoed through the ultrasound room, Maria felt her knees weaken. Ethan's face went still with a reverence he could not hide. Something broke open between them in that moment, something neither of them named. Leo improved. The surgery was scheduled. The danger receded. But as her brother healed, a new struggle grew. Maria began to love the child inside her. She tried not to. She told herself this was temporary, a duty, a bridge that would vanish once crossed. But love does not follow contracts. It took root in her quietly, especially at night when the baby stirred and reminded her of its presence with soft, persistent movements beneath her ribs. Ethan noticed the change. He brought books. He spoke to her belly when he thought she slept. Once, without thinking, he called the baby our child. The word lingered in the air between them like an accidental confession. Leo, now sitting up and laughing again, watched them both with knowing eyes. One afternoon he asked, "Why does he look at you, like he's afraid of losing you?" Maria had no answer. As her body changed, so did the distance between business and something far more dangerous. Vulnerability, hope, attachment. The pregnancy became no longer a transaction, but a living thread binding them together. And Maria feared the day she would have to cut it. The night the pain came early, it came without warning. Maria woke to sharp cramps that stole the air from her chest. The house, once silent and grand, erupted with rushed footsteps and whispered panic. Ethan carried her to the car as rain streaked across the windshield like frantic tears. He drove with one hand on the wheel, one gripping hers so tightly it hurt. At the hospital, doctors moved fast. Words like early labor and risk sliced through the air. For hours, Maria lay still under bright lights, listening to the heartbeat on the monitor and wondering if love could kill as surely as fear. At last, the contractions slowed. The danger passed. When the doctor left, Ethan collapsed into the chair beside her bed, rubbing his face as though waking from a nightmare he never expected to have. "I almost lost everything," he said hoarsely. "So did I," she whispered. That night changed them. What had been slowly building could no longer hide behind paperwork. Ethan began staying close, sleeping on a sofa near her room, working from home, guarding her rest with a devotion that startled them both. The line had shifted, quietly, irreversibly. 2 weeks before the due date, Maria stood alone in the nursery Ethan had built. Soft yellow walls, handcrafted furniture, shelves already lined with tiny shoes and books. It was beautiful. It was unbearable. Ethan found her there, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "I cannot walk away," she said. "I tried to prepare myself, but I can't." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he did something no contract had ever required him to do. He knelt in front of her, gently taking her shaking hands in his. "Then don't," He told her what he had felt for months. The love he had tried to bury beneath logic. The family he no longer wished to purchase, but to build. "I want all of you," he said. "Not just the child. Not just the idea. You." Maria's courage faltered, then grew ferocious. She told him of her fears, of her past, of what she believed she did not deserve. "Let me decide what I deserve," he replied. Leo wheeled in quietly, listening from the doorway. "If you don't choose each other," he said in his small, serious voice, "you'll both be sad forever." The truth came from a child, that night between pain and hope. Maria chose not to surrender her heart after all. Labor came with thunder and rain, as if the world itself strained with them. Ethan never let go of her hand. When their daughter finally cried into the quiet dawn, both of them wept without restraint. They named her Grace, not for religion, but for the unearned mercy life had finally shown them. In the days that followed, as sunlight filled the hospital room and Leo held his niece for the first time, Maria realized something deeper than survival. She had entered this bargain to save one life. She had discovered that life had quietly saved hers in return. Ethan looked at his daughter not with ownership, but with awe, and at Maria not with possession, but with devotion. The contract was never mentioned again. They married beneath open sky in a small gathering of people who carried scars and laughter in equal measure. No grand spectacle, no public attention, just truth spoken aloud. Ethan adopted Leo without hesitation. The boy who once lay near death now ran laughing through wide halls that echoed with footsteps of second chances. Maria returned to school, finishing the education she had abandoned when grief overtook her youth. She trained in pediatric care, drawn by the memory of cold waiting rooms and desperate prayers that lived in exhausted hands. Ethan stepped back from endless work. He learned that wealth multiplies only when shared with purpose. Together, they created a clinic fund that quietly erased medical debts for families who stood where Maria once stood with nothing but fear and love. Redemption did not come in a single heroic act. It came in daily choices to remain kind when they no longer had to be desperate. Years later, Maria stood on their porch in the quiet of evening, watching Grace chase fireflies in the yard while Leo practiced brave bicycle rides down the long drive. Ethan stood beside her, his arm warm and steady around her shoulders. "Do you ever think about that night in the cafe?" he asked. "Every day," she replied. "It was the scariest decision of my life. And the best," he said softly. They had all been drowning in different ways back then. Money had not saved them. Contracts had not healed them. What saved them was the moment fear gave way to courage, and courage opened the door to love. Maria had once believed her body was a price to be paid for survival. She learned instead that her heart was never a commodity. Sometimes life offers us impossible bargains. It demands more than we believe we can give. But when we choose with honesty instead of despair, those bargains can transform into something sacred without ever needing to be named. She watched her children, laughing under a sky that once felt unreachable, and she finally understood. The greatest debts are not paid with money. They are paid with love, courage, and the willingness to stay when walking away would be easier.